Assalomu alaykum hurmatli televizor ko'ruvchilar. Erkin Osiyo radiosi uchun Gulchehra ekraninglarda navbatda men Amerika poytaxti Washingtonga joylashgan Amerika parlament binosining oldida turibdiman. Bugun 2011 yil 5-oyning 2-kuni dushanba. Bugun Uyg'urlar uchun odatli kun emas. Chunki mana bu hayvatli binoning ichidagi yig'in zalida bugun Sherqiy Turkistan Uyg'ur Aliy Kengishining Echilish murasimi o'tkazilmoqchi. Murasim soat 10'da başlanıdı. Hazır Murasimga yana yarım saat vaqt qapti. Bugungi murasimni, ya'ni Sherqiy Turkistan Uyghur Aliy Kengishini Rabiya Qodir xonimning tashabbusi bilan 1 yil burun tayyorlik xizmatlarini boshlagan navbatda Echilish oldi turdi. Dünya Uyghur qurultayining yetkazgan ma'lumotga qaraganda Xitoy hukumatı mazkur yig'inning echilishiga xeyli bir to'salg'ular yaratgan. Lekin bugun mana hammamiz ko'rib turibdik. Sherqiy Turkistan Uyghur Aliy Kengishi muvaffaqiyatli echilish oldi turdi. Qiynamsa televizor ko'ruvchilar men bilan birlikda yig'in zaliga marhamat. Assalomu alaykum hurmatli televizor ko'ruvchilar. Amerika Erkin Osiyo radiosi uchun Gulchehra Washingtondan ma'lumot bermoqda. Men hozir Amerika Davlat Majlisi binosining janubiy yig'in zalida. Mana bu yig'in zalida bugun Uyg'urlar kutgan, shundaqla Dünya Uyghur qurultayining raisi Rabiya Qodir xonimning tashabbusi bilan tayyorlik ko'rib boshlangan Sherqiy Turkiston Uyg'ur Aliy Kengishining Echilish murasimi o'tkazilmoqchi. Bu murasimga 20 dan ortiq davlatdan 100 dan ortiq vakil qatnashadi. Shundaqli bugun yana Amerika Davlat Majlisining bir qism a'zolari, nopozliq xalqaro inson huquqlari tashkilotlarining vakillari ham bir qism oliy mehmonlar qatnashadi va nutqlar beradi. Hurmatli televizor ko'ruvchilar, bugungi bu echilish murasimining tafsilotini televizorimiz orqali, ekranimiz orqali sizlar bilan yuz ko'rishtiramiz. Sherqiy Turkiston Uyg'ur Aliy Kengishining bugungi echilish murasimi 2011 yil 5-oyning 2-kuni dushanba soat 10'da boshlanmoqchi. Hozir yig'in boshlanadiganga 10 minutlarcha vaqt qoldi. Hozir vakillar asosan yig'in zaliga yig'ilib, joylarda o'tirib, echilish murasimini taqozolik bilan kutmoqda. Hurmatli televizor ko'ruvchilar, hozir yig'in boshlanadiganga yana 10 minutcha vaqt bor ekan. Mush fursatdan foydalanib men avval Dünya Uyghur qurultayining bayonotchisi Dilshod Rishit apandidan tanishtirib o'tay. Dilshod apandi, xush keldingiz Washingtonga.
Rahmat sizga.
Tuanda televizor ko'ruvchilarimizga bugungi bu ya'ni Sherqiy Turkiston Uyg'ur Aliy Kengishining ahamiyati haqida so'z qilib bergan bo'lsangiz.
Chunki bu Uyg'urlarning taqdiri ta Xitoyninki bizni besib olgandan hozirgacha nurg'unlagan fidokorlarni qilyapmiz. Ham Xitoymi shuning qarta o'xshamagan shaklda zarba berish harakatini elib beryapti. Ammo xalqimizningki umid uzilmaganlik sababidan nurg'unlagan bardoshlarni to'lab kelyapmiz. Endi bu qatim, endi bu Aliy Kengishning yig'inining echishi butun shu Sharq Turkistonningki hozirgi siyosiy taqdiri, kelgusida qanday shakldagi siyosiy faoliyatlarni elib berib va xalqimizningki haqiqiy siyosiy arzusini amalga oshirish ham bizningki davoirimizningki yo'lini qanday shaklda texnik tizlashtirish. Endi bu yig'inga albatta 20 davlatdan 100 dan ortiq vakillar keldi. Bu vakillarning ichidan ziyolilar, dinizorlar, ayol kishilarning vakili, o'quvchi, yoshlar chiqib umumiy yuzlik o'xshamagan shakldagi fikrni qabul qilish orqali shularni bir xulos chiqarib o'zimizning millatniki umuman qabul qiladigan bir strategik bir plan tuzib chiqamiz.
Amerika Davlat Majlisining dal mush yig'in zalida 2 yil burun Dünya Uyghur qurultayining echilish murosimi bo'lib o'tgan edi. Endi dapaqsangiz bu qitimqi bu Sherqiy Turkiston Uyg'ur Aliy Kengishi bilan Dünya Uyghur qurultayining odatdagi yig'inlarining nima farqi bor?
Chunki bu farqi nihoyatda cho'ng. Endi bu qatimdagi yig'inninki o'xshamagan shakldagi insonlarningki hammasi demokratik shaklda o'ziniki fikrlarini ifoda qiladi. Bu bir. Ikkinchisi bo'libmi 7-oyning 5 qonliq bastırış hareketi yürübergendiği ki bütün halkımız zaten bu şu vatanın davasını kandak şekilde texim tez alette özümüzünki oylagan niyetki yetiş için ki oxşamagan fikir, oxşamagan ideya hemmesini toplap bir stratejik yeni hazırki halkara siyasi kanun olmasından ve hazırki vatan işçi ve işçideki milletimizdeki umumi arzusu bilen birleştirip bir mükemmel bir siyasi yolunu tuttuğumuz endi.
Dilshod Rishit apandi hamda Dünya Uyghur qurultayining bayonotchisi bo'lish sifatingiz bilan bu qitimqi yana bugungi boshlangan Sherqiy Turkiston Uyg'ur Aliy Kengishining bir bayonotchilik xizmatini ustingizga oldingizmi?
Albatta endi bu qatimqi yig'inninki albatta ki muxbirlarning ziyoratini endi bir tutash Alim Seyitovlar bilan biz mush masalani javob berishga tayyor bo'lyapmiz. Endi meningki hozir endi radio televizordan foydalanib vatan ishchi va vatan teshidagi barliq xalqimizning umidlab bizga ishinib va bizning davoirimizni texnik yuksak bo'lganiga umid bilan kutayotganligini ko'rib turyapmiz va bizmi shularning umidini yerga qo'ymaydiganiga ishonamiz.
Rahmat sizga. Yig'ininglarning o'ngishli bo'lishini kutamiz. Rahmat.
Efendimler, hanımlar, yig'inimizni rasmiy boshlab ketdik. Assalomu alaykum, aziz mehmonlar, Sherqiy Turkistonlik vatandoshlar. Amerikaning poytaxti, ya'ni Amerikaning davlat majlisi da echilgan Sherqiy Turkistan Uyghur Aliy Kengishi yig'iniga xush keldinglar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, distinguished guests, and the honorable members of Congress. With great pleasure, I welcome you to the official opening ceremony of the conference, The Future of the Uyghur People in East Turkestan. This conference is organized by the World Uyghur Congress. It's co-sponsored. What's happening? Sorry. It's co-sponsored by Freedom House, the Uyghur American Association, and the International Uyghur and Human Rights Foundation, Democracy Foundation. It's an international conference with historic significance for the Uyghur people. The main goal of the conference is to provide a constructive forum for the Uyghur leaders from around the world to discuss the ongoing and severe violations of the Uyghur people's civil, political, social, economic, and cultural rights in East Turkestan by the Chinese government. To begin, I would like to invite Uyghur democracy leader, Madame Rabia Kadir, to make her official opening remarks. Rabia Khan.
Assalamu alaikum. Barlıq Sharq Türkistanның taqdiri üçün kengişib, vatanimiz Sharqi Türkistanның erkinligi və azadlığı üçün Meşədi şunun yol xəritəsi sizişqa dünyanın həmmi yerdən kəlgən qeyrindaşlarımız bugün Amerikanın mərkəzi və Amerikanın siyasi mərkəzi bolğan Kapitol xilinin içində məclis xanada həmminlər bilan bir yerə cəmləşkənimizdən nəhayət məmnun sizlərə çox ali ehtiram bildirirəm. Rəhmət kəlgəninglərə. Şunun bilan Amerikadan kelgan mehmonlar, Kongress, Senator, NED, Freedom House hem barliq mehmonlarimizga chin ko'nglimdan rahmat aytaman. Biz bugun taşlanıp ketmaganligimizni mushu dunyoning hamma yerdan kelgan barliq xalqimizning taqdiriga ko'ngil berayotgan, Sharqi Turkistonning taqdiriga ko'ngil berayotgan, vatandagi turumlarda yetayotgan, tutilayotgan, etilayotgan, xalqi ko'ngilayotgan xalqimizning mishaga to'plashishidan bizning xalqimizning yetim qolmaydiganligi va o'zimizga ega chiqa oladiganligimiz va bizning mush Kapitol xilning ichida bir yig'inni ocha olishimiz dunyoning bizni tashlab etmaganligi va mana mushundaq bir so'rinlarda bizga siyosiy so'rinni hozirlab berayotganligi, bizning taqdirimizga ko'ngil berayotganligi, biz dunyodan hamma yerdan kelib bu yerga to'plashganligimiz, o'zimizning taqdirimizni o'zimizning cho'qim tashlamay hal qiladiganligimiz, bu so'rinni bizga hozirlab berib, mayli kongressdan bo'lsin, mayli senatordan bo'lsin, mayli Human Rights Watch'dan bo'lsin, mayli kishilik huquq tashkilotlari Amnesty International, Freedom House olsun, mushu Amerikadagi yuqori darajalik siyosiy yo'llarning mishaga kelib, bütün dünyadan yig'ilgan Uyghur ve Şarkı Türkistanlı kırındaşlarga meşhede deklarat berişi, sizlerni biz taşlap etmeyimiz. Sizlerning akınladı biz ba, sizler çokum özеңlarning erkinligiga özеңlar çıkıslar. Sizlerning erkinliginler üçün biz her yerde sizlerning avazыңlar bulumuz deyişten ibaret ve şunundan direktör buludu. Ben bugün özümüzden şununcu yıllardan beri, 60 yıllardan beri gözlerimizden kan, yaş temip muşu küllerini arzu kılandık. Mana bugün Amerika'nın Washington'da, muşu Kapitol Hill'nin içinde, muşu Kongres senatör ve bütün siyasi tadqiqatçılarımız hemimizden bizge deklarat berişi, cevap berişi ve birlikte bizden qo'llashi asasida muşu sorunga birlikte cem bulalıqanligimizdan xalqimiz xabardor bo'lsa, qancha ümitlenip ketadi, qancha xo'sh bo'lib ketadi deb o'ylayman. Mana bugun bütün O'rta Osiyodagi, bütün Sharqiy Turkistondagi, bütün dunyodagi Uyg'urlarimiz ko'ryapti. Radio Free Ajardan naq maydonni beryapti. Biz o'zimizning ozodligi uchun va o'zimizning taqdiri uchun Kapitol Hill'ning ichida sadarımızı dünyaya beryapmiz. Bizning ovozimiz bugün bütün g'arb dunyosi, bütün dünya, bütün Osiyo, bütün dunyoga mushu o'ydan tarqaladi. Men bugün mushu so'ringa kelib, jamlashib, o'zimizning taqdiri va bizning taqdirimiz uchun fikr qilayotganlarning hammasiga rahmat aytaman. Bugün bizning yig'inimizning Echilishi boshlandi. Men Echilish murasimi bilan Sharqiy Turkiston Aliy Kengishidagi barliq dunyodagi 20 million Uyg'urni va Sharqiy Turkistonlikni chin ko'nglimdan tabriklayman. Rahmat.
Rabia Hanım alaydı, rahmet. I would like to read her official statement in English. It's an honor to welcome you to the official opening ceremony of the conference, The Future of the Uyghur People in East Turkestan. Our presence in the U.S. Capitol building, at the very heart of democracy, speaks to the political aspirations of millions of the Uyghurs across the globe. Our presence at the U.S. Capitol also shines a light on the strong and unwavering support of our friends from the United States. I would like to thank all of the speakers today, from Congress, from the human rights community, and the academia, who have always been ready to defend Uyghurs from Chinese government repression. It is frequently said that Uyghurs are a forgotten people. However, our friends remind us that this is not so. The great progress made by democratic Uyghur organizations would not be so formidable without the resolute support provided by the National Endowment for Democracy. And it is long-standing concern for the conditions and future of East Turkestan has touched the hearts of the Uyghur people. I would also like to thank Freedom House for co-sponsoring this conference. Freedom House's reputation for speaking out for the voiceless is admired across the human rights community. We are proud to have their commitment to this conference. Since July 2009 unrest in Urumqi, the Chinese authorities in Beijing and Urumqi have pursued policies that aim to further marginalize the Uyghur people. Chinese government political repression and a fierce assault on freedom of speech that aims to suppress Uyghur hopes for human rights and democracy has been accompanied by vicious policies of assimilation that are gradually eroding the fabric of the Uyghur society and the Uyghur people's very cultural identity. In the light of this decisive juncture in political, economic, social, and cultural conditions in East Turkestan, this conference comes at a critical time in the history of the Uyghur people. The historical importance of this conference cannot be understated. It is the first occasion in modern times that Uyghurs have come together from across the political spectrum, that it is happening when we, as the indigenous people of the East Turkestan, are facing an existential threat. As a unique people is no coincidence. To the Uyghur delegates who have traveled from many countries to participate, I welcome you to Washington, D.C. The conference will provide the kind of forum for the Uyghur voices so lacking in China, but so key to understanding the Uyghur perspective on current conditions and the direction of our people. Uyghurs will be able to express their opinions freely and listen to new perspectives. As we democratically develop common strategies and effective political platforms, it is important to remember that even despite our difference, we are united in our commitment to the freedom of the Uyghur people. As one, robust democracies are defined by freely expressed points of view, competing opinion, and respect for divergent standpoints. The building toward a strong future for our people is contained within opportunities, such as this conference. We must step up confidently, seize this opportunity, and show our people that it's not the authoritarian government in Beijing who defines us, but it is we, the Uyghur. James McGovern. Congressman McGovern is serving his 8th term at the U.S. Congress. At the moment, Congressman McGovern serves as a senior minority whip, the second-ranking Democrat on the powerful House Rules Committee, which sets the terms for debate and amendments on most legislation, and a member of the House Agriculture Committee. Mr. McGovern is also co-chair of both the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission and the House Hunger Caucus. Since his election in 1996, Congressman McGovern has been widely recognized as a tenacious advocate for his district, a tireless crusader for change, and an unrivaled supporter for social justice and fundamental human rights. Let's welcome Congressman McGovern.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Aliy, and I appreciate the invitation to be here. And I want to welcome all of you to the nation's capital. And I want to thank all of you for your international efforts to protect and promote the most basic human rights of the Uyghur people. I'm sad to say that there are a few people in the United States who I think fully realize that various regions of China were once autonomous and independent countries. Most people could identify Tibet and its spiritual leader, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, whom I've had the honor to meet. Many books have been written about Tibet. Many movies and documentaries have been made about Tibet. And events that affect Tibet tend to be covered by major U.S. and international press. Altogether, they have helped make Tibet more of a household name around the world. Meanwhile, its neighboring region, which the Uyghur people know as East Turkmenistan, and which the People's Republic of China officially calls the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, it is a mystery to many people in my country. It is certainly a region of the world that is still largely unknown to the majority of Americans and the world community at large, and I include many members of the United States Congress. Sadly, if Americans have heard of Uyghurs at all, who are the 8 to 10 million Turkic Muslim ethnic community living in this northwestern region of China, it is unfortunately in a very different context, that of Guantanamo. While the U.S. government under the previous administration had determined early on that the Uyghurs held at Guantanamo were innocent and were not enemy combatants, and a U.S. court even ordered the release of these Uyghur prisoners into the United States, since to return them to China would have almost certainly resulted in their execution, or at least severe torture and detention, there are still a few Uyghurs remaining in Guantanamo today. And we've had to rely on such small countries as Albania, Bermuda, and Palau to help correct our mistakes by accepting these Uyghurs for resettlement. And they are now eking out peaceful lives in those countries. I certainly don't need to tell you that Uyghurs continue to be harshly repressed by the Chinese government. It is unconscionable. China considers any expression of cultural diversity an act of treason and sedition, punishable all too often by death, and generally following blatantly unfair trials, often held in complete secrecy. In July of 2009, the ongoing suppression and attacks on Uyghur culture resulted in open mass protest, which again was met with harsh violence, mass arrests, executions, and incommunicado detentions. As a result, I introduced bipartisan legislation, HRES 953, to express the condemnation of the U.S. House of Representatives regarding the crackdown and the continuing violation of basic human rights in Xinjiang. I had hoped that the bill would have been debated, voted upon, and approved in December, but we were not successful in bringing it to the House floor before the Congress adjourned. I intend to introduce similar updated legislation in support of basic human rights for the Uyghur people in China later this year, perhaps in July, marking the 2-year anniversary of the tragic crackdown in Xinjiang. Finally, I would like to recognize Rabia Kadir, who has worked tirelessly to bring attention to the situation of the Uyghur people. I know that, just like me, members of Congress would not have known about your people or the repression they face every day in China were it not for the work of Rabia and many U.S. human rights organizations such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Freedom House, and the National Endowment for Democracy. Let me conclude by saying that I believe that if the United States of America stands for anything, it needs to stand out loud and foursquare for human rights. And I believe that that means that we need to stand stronger and firmer and more loudly against the continued repression by the Chinese government, not only against the Uyghur people, but against many other people who choose to raise their voices in dissent or choose to express a different viewpoint. I think the United States has been too silent in the face of many of the crackdowns in China. And I hope that with your help and with your continued support and education of members of Congress and education of the American people at large, that you will see Congress and you will see this administration strengthen their resolve in standing for human rights. So welcome to Washington. I wish you success with your conference throughout the coming week, and I am proud to stand with you in the cause of human rights and justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Congressman McGovern, for your excellent remark and for your long-standing support of the Uyghur people, and as well as your introduction of many resolutions over the past years. And next, I would like to introduce Congressman Keith Allison, actually, who is traveling today, who is not with us today, but he has sent a message to the conference. So I'd like to read that for you. Here is his message. He sent us. We invited Congressman Keith Allison to attend the opening ceremony this morning. Unfortunately, he's traveling and cannot make it. Congressman Allison shares our Muslim faith and has been a vocal supporter of the Uyghur human rights cause. In his meeting with Ms. Rabia Kadir last year, Congressman Allison equated Ms. Kadir with Rosa Parks, whose portrait was hung in his office. Rosa Parks is one of the most recognized symbols of the civil rights movement here in the United States. It was a much appreciated and honored comparison. Congressman Allison conveys his regret that he is unable to attend today, but wants to reiterate his support for House Resolution 953 from last Congress, which was introduced by Congressman James McGovern. As you may know, the resolution strongly condemns the Chinese government's violent crackdown in July 2009, calls on the Chinese government to cease such crackdowns on the Uyghur people, and urges the U.S. government to raise those human rights concerns in all meetings with the Chinese officials. We thank the Congressman for his support. Now I would like to invite and introduce actually our longtime supporter and friend, Mr. Karl Gershman, the president of the National Endowment for Democracy. In addition to presiding over the endowment's grants programs in Africa, Asia, Middle East, Eastern Europe, the former Soviet Union, and Latin America, he has overseen the creation of the quarterly Journal of Democracy, International Forum for Democratic Studies, and the Reagan Fasol Democracy Fellowship Program. He also took the lead in launching in New Delhi in 1999 the World Movement for Democracy, which is a global network of democracy practitioners and scholars. Prior to assuming the position with the endowment, Mr. Gershman was senior counselor to the United States, representative to the United Nations, in which capacity he served as the U.S. representative to the UN's Third Committee that deals with human rights issues, and also as alternative representative of the U.S. to the UN Security Council. Let's warmly welcome Mr. Karl Gershman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and Rabia Kadir. And let me say what a very impressive gathering this is. Today happens to be, in addition to, the day after we've eliminated Osama bin Laden, it is also World Press Freedom Day. And on the occasion of World Press Freedom Day, the National Endowment for Democracy, in cooperation with some other institutions and in cooperation with UNESCO, is celebrating World Press Freedom Day here in Washington at a conference a few blocks from here at the museum. And last night I had to speak at the opening of that conference on World Press Freedom Day. In coming here, I had asked Luisa Griva, who you'll hear from in a while, give me a few notes on what's been happening with our Uyghur friends in the last year. So she gave me a slew of papers. But two of the papers struck my eye. One of them had to do with the introduction in March in the European Parliament of an urgency resolution on the destruction of old Kashgar city. And the European Parliament was calling upon UNESCO to recognize old Kashgar city as not just part of the identity of the Uyghur people, but also as part of the heritage of world civilization. And the urgency of the resolution, of course, derived from the fact that, as you all know, the Chinese government is in the process of destroying this very central element of world civilization, old Kashgar city. And they were urgently calling upon UNESCO to recognize the importance of this and to begin to include old Kashgar city in the list of protected places in the world. A second piece of paper that I had to do with the fact that the Chinese government itself had introduced a motion within UNESCO to have the Meshrep practice included as an intangible, as part of the so-called intangible cultural heritage recognized by UNESCO. The Meshrep, as we all know, is a practice of gatherings, a traditional Uyghur practice, and it's a practice that the Chinese government has banned, as a result of which we had the Gulja uprising in February of 1997, because they were protesting against the repression and the prohibition upon the Uyghur people to practice this traditional form of community gathering. And yet here was the Chinese government itself introducing something to recognize Meshrep. While it was repressing it, it was also calling upon UNESCO to recognize it as part of the world's cultural heritage. And the World Uyghur Congress had distributed this piece of paper that Louisa shared with me, basically saying that the Chinese government was engaged in an act of deception while they repress, while they destroy the traditional culture. They were, in a token way, showing that they recognized it. Maybe they want to send to Disney World. Well, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because last night I had the good fortune at the opening of our World Press Freedom Day event to sit with the Director General of UNESCO. And I had these two pieces of paper. And I was able not only to give these two pieces of paper, one on Kashgar, the other on Meshrep, to the Director General of UNESCO, but to say this is something that UNESCO must pay attention to. She didn't really know about the Uyghurs. She didn't. She's a wonderful woman, by the way, a Bulgarian woman. First woman to head UNESCO. And she was very happy to learn about the European Parliament resolution calling upon UNESCO to try to do what it can to save Kashgar, old Kashgar, and also to understand the background of this introduction by the Chinese of a motion to add the Meshrep practice to the list of intangible, the list of elements that belong on this intangible cultural heritage list. So a dialogue has been started with UNESCO. I think that's worthwhile. I think we've got to get the United Nations and especially UNESCO to pay attention to what's happening in old Kashgar city. This is a crime. It's a crime. There is a Chinese scholar at the Beijing Normal University, Wu Tang. And let me just read what he said. He said the old town also reflects Muslim culture of the Uyghurs very well. It has the original taste and flavor without any changes. Here, Uyghur culture is attached to those raw earth buildings. If they are torn down, the affiliated culture will be destroyed. That's a very serious problem. It's not just a matter of building a few new buildings. It's destroying a culture. And I think this is what's at stake. I think this is what's at stake. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But what's at stake is the survival of the Uyghur people, the survival of Uyghur culture. One other thing we're doing at the National Endowment for Democracy is that we're working with the United States Memorial Holocaust Museum to create an international working group within the international governmental association called the Community of Democracies. There's an international governmental association called the Community of Democracies, which is meeting in Vilnius on June 30th and July 1st. Lithuania has the chair of the Community of Democracies. And we're talking about the creation of a working group on the prevention of genocide. If this working group comes into existence, it would be intergovernmental, but also with non-governmental participation. I think it should look at the Uyghur issue. Because the Genocide Convention doesn't only look at the physical destruction of a people. It also says a people can be destroyed if its culture is destroyed. And this is only one dimension of what is happening in Xinjiang, in East Turkestan. Under the bilingual education policy, the use of the Uyghur language is being prohibited and destroyed. The practice of religion is being prohibited. I've already spoken about the traditional meshrep practice. The region is being populated from the east by Han Chinese, and the resources for development are being directed at the new residents of Xinjiang. And as Rabia Kadir pointed out at the meeting we had last July on the occasion of the anniversary of the Urumqi massacre, young girls from Urumqi and Kashgar and elsewhere in East Turkestan are being sent 3,000 miles to the east to work in factories. Who are these 17-year-old kids? Why are they being sent? Just for employment purposes? They're being sent there so that they won't be raising families. This is part of a more general policy of destroying Uyghur culture and the Uyghur people. This is something that the international community has to recognize. And on top of all that, you have the destruction of old Kashgar city. This is an urgent problem, and it's something the international community must recognize. That has within it a dimension, and I'll be very, very blunt in saying this. I know this is a strong word, but I've described the context. It has within it an element of genocide. Now, the Uyghur people are repressed. They can't work politically. And yet, there is now an emigre Uyghur population here, gathered in this room. And this emigre population has the capacity to speak out, to have meetings in the U.S. Congress, to go to countries like Australia and Norway and elsewhere to raise the issue, to be the voice for the repressed Uyghur people. We have Rabia Kadir, who is recognized internationally with a voice. And you must be the voice, because you live in a society of freedom, you must be the voice of the suppressed Uyghur people. I think you're using that voice well in the way you're beginning to organize, in the way you're learning how American politics works, the European Parliament, Australia. We have to work at every possible level. But one final point. We have to work for Uyghur rights. We have to educate the international community about what is happening and the threat to the survival of the Uyghur people. But to be very frank, the Uyghur people will not be able to be protected and ultimately have their rights respected until China changes. The Uyghur people have a very close relationship in terms of interest with the movement in China for democracy. The movement represented by somebody like Liu Xiaobo, who got the Nobel Peace Prize last December, and we were together, Rabia and I, in Oslo when Liu Xiaobo received the Nobel Peace Prize, and this enormous international recognition. There is a democracy movement in China. Following the uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt, the Chinese government repressed anybody who would even put on the internet the words Jasmine Revolution. They're nervous. They realize that something like that could happen in China. There are over 400 million people on the internet in China. Everyone has cell phones. You cannot hide what is happening in the world. There are people in China who want normal political rights. This was stated in the Charter 08 Declaration that was signed by more than 11,000 Chinese intellectuals and activists, and is the basis of the Chinese democracy movement. It was signed on Human Rights Day, December 10th, 2008, and it was named after the Charter 77 resolution in Czechoslovakia, which ultimately led to democracy in Czechoslovakia, and now two countries, the Czech and Slovak republics. So there's a movement in China. We are supporting that movement. Ultimately, I believe that movement will have a chance to prevail, and there is an article in the Charter 08 Declaration calling for a federation, saying that it would have to be negotiated, because it also relates to Tibet. And in the Chinese view, it also relates to Taiwan. So these are issues that have to be negotiated. But I believe eventually they will be. And it will be part of a new China. A new China that is willing to respect the rights of the minorities that live in China and to grant them full cultural, linguistic, and religious rights. Eventually that will be worked out. And until that time comes, it is our responsibility collectively to work to preserve the Uyghur people, Uyghur culture, Uyghur identity, the Uyghur language, and to oppose in every way we can the effort by the Chinese government to destroy the Uyghur people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gershman, for your excellent remark. And we are truly blessed to have a great friend like Mr. Gershman, and without whose endowment support, we would not have achieved such great success, both in the United States and around the world, in raising the cause of the Uyghurs. So thank you. And now I would like to introduce U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, who is not with us, unfortunately, but who also sent a message of congratulation and expressing his strong support. Senator Sherrod Brown. Since January 2007, Senator Brown represents Ohio at the U.S. Senate, promoting human rights of the oppressed like us and defending Taiwan from potential Chinese aggression. Senator Brown serves on the powerful Senate Appropriations Committee and the Senate Banking Committee. He also serves on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee and the Senate Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee. He is the chairman of the Financial Institutions and Consumer Protection Subcommittee. Prior to serving in the U.S. Senate, Brown served as a U.S. Congressman for the 13th District, Ohio's Secretary of State, and as a member of Ohio General Assembly. He also taught at Ohio State University. So here is his message. to Ms. Rabia Kadir. Thank you for inviting me to attend this year's meeting. I extend my sincere appreciation and gratitude to the World Uyghur Congress, the Uyghur American Association, the International Uyghur Human Rights and Democracy Foundation for your continued fight for human rights. Your work reflects the values of peace and prosperity that define the Uyghur people. Thank you for traveling from sites around the world to participate in Uyghur Week in Washington. As you well know, for more than 4,000 years, Uyghur people have inhabited the legendary Silk Road. Uyghurs are a people with a rich cultural heritage, one that has long supported cultural exchanges between East and the West. Today, under your leadership, Uyghurs continue to contribute to the diversity of our world in a positive and peaceful manner. Your work ensures the plight of the Uyghur people is not just confined to prisons and oppressed communities in China. Instead, thanks to your work, the plight of the Uyghur people is known and understood by all people and all governments who believe in human rights, cultural diversity, and religious freedom. For too long, the West has looked the other way as China declares a war on human rights, including its systemic and intentional attack on the Uyghur culture, language, religion, and the way of life. The United States and all democratic governments must stand up rather than apologize for China's brutal regime. With your tireless advocacy, we will do that. I look forward to working with you to recognize and promote the Uyghurs' unique cultural heritage so that it may continue to contribute to the global good for centuries to come. Sincerely, Senator Brown. Senator Sherrod Brown also introduced a number of resolutions in support of the Uyghur people at the U.S. Senate. So we are very grateful to have a strong supporter also on the Senate side. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Sue Gunawardena Vaughn. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Dr. Vaughn currently manages the International Religious Freedom Consortium and the Southeast Asia program at Freedom House. She joined Freedom House in 2009, and during her first year, in addition to overseeing the International Religious Freedom Consortium, she managed the Global Human Rights Program. Prior to joining Freedom House, she served for 8 years as a program director at Amnesty International USA, where she directed its global death penalty abolition campaign. She is highly experienced in mobilizing a diverse range of faith communities to engage in human rights campaigns and has written extensively on ethnic religious identity politics. Dr. Vaughn holds a PhD in government from the University of Texas at Austin with a theoretical focus on ethno-religious nationalism. Let's welcome Dr. Sue Vaughn.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you to the World Uyghur Congress for having Freedom House at this very important event. Good morning to everyone, to our congressional guests, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to members of the Uyghur diaspora community. I bring you good wishes from my boss, David Kramer, who's Freedom House's executive director. As Carl mentioned, it's World Press Freedom Day, and we have an event at the museum, and he's very sad that he can't be here with you today. And he sends his warmest wishes to you all. David has been a friend of the Uyghur community for a very long time in various different capacities that he's held, and he sends warm wishes to you, Ms. Kadir. And Ms. Kadir continues to be an inspiration to us all. someone said today was a milestone because in addition to this event, it's World Press Freedom Day. Next Sunday is also kind of a milestone because it's Mother's Day. And I want to tell you why I personally got involved in the Uyghur struggle when I was a program director at Amnesty International. It wasn't just because of the death penalty component. This was around 2001 when my good colleague and friend who might be in the audience, Kumar, who's the director of Asia programs at Amnesty, told me about this prisoner of conscience, Ms. Rabia Kadir, who was a businesswoman and who was separated from her children at the time. My own mother was a businesswoman, and my own mother was is quite vocal when it comes to social justice issues and human rights issues. The only difference was that my mother was never imprisoned and has had the freedom to speak freely about issues of concern to us and to our faith community. The story of Ms. Kadir was very inspirational to me personally, and I had the fortune of working on her case when she was a prisoner of conscience, and we were ecstatic when she was ultimately able to come to the United States and reunite with her family. It was a very emotional day, and it's a memorable one for me personally. Many of you here are unfortunately all too familiar with the litany of human rights abuses that the Uyghur community has been subject to over several decades, not just years, but several decades, and the heavy-handed repression that even continues today. Any kind of cultural, ethno-linguistic, or religious expression is deemed, quote-unquote, separatist, and all kinds of bogus charges are leveled against human rights activists and religious freedom advocates in the name of, quote-unquote, state security. Both the US State Department and the US Commission on International Religious Freedom have in their respective recent reports highlighted the worsening plight of the Uyghurs. Chinese authorities have broadened their campaign of repression to discredit and imprison the community's religious leaders, control the selection of clergy, ban religious gatherings, and control the distribution of religious literature, in addition to subjecting the community to other more routine human rights violations. And it goes on, and it hasn't actually abated. It continues to accelerate. It must be understood for those of us who are concerned about human rights and religious freedom, and those of us who are not concerned about human rights and religious freedom, that these issues are not merely human rights concerns. They also figure prominently into the US international security concerns and into the US security equation. A comprehensive analysis conducted by the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life documented that more than half of the world's population lives in countries with a high or very high degree of government restriction on religion. And this has consequences, not just for those people who are living in those repressive regimes, but for those of us in the United States as well. It is becoming increasingly apparent that to ignore religious freedom and human rights issues in order to pursue trade and security is a dangerous course, and that we do so at our own peril. And this will not ultimately serve US interests. This is certainly the case with China, and I don't think anyone in this room needs any convincing of that. A hero of mine, and probably of many of you in this room, was Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., who once said that in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Mixing several metaphors here, I know. I'm preaching to the choir, and everyone in this room has been vocal in shining a light on the abuse suffered by the Uyghur community. So it remains our collective responsibility that we continue to not be silent. We, the Uyghur diaspora community, we, friends of the Uyghurs in the United States, we are the ones who need to give voice to our voiceless Uyghur brothers and sisters in China. And we must ensure that China is consistently reminded of its human rights responsibilities especially to its own citizens. I wish the Uyghur community a productive and successful conference, and hope that you will forge strong ties with each other and forge strong global networks which will further strengthen your struggle. Know that all of us at Freedom House will be standing in strong solidarity with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Van, for your profound support of the Uyghur people and the deep concern of the Uyghurs' human rights issues. And we cannot thank Freedom House enough for co-sponsoring today's historic conference. And also, we are very grateful for former Assistant Secretary of State David Kramer for his long-standing support of the Uyghur people and his interest in Uyghur rights issues. And talking about former important State Department officials, we have a very prominent guest here. Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Randall Shriver. Mr. Shriver is President and also Chief Executive Officer of the Project 2049 Institute. He is also the founding partner of Armitage International, LLC, and a senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. He served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs from 2003 to 2005, and also as Chief of Staff and Senior Policy Advisor to then Deputy Secretary of State Richard Armitage from 2001 to 2003. Prior to his work at the State Department, he was an independent consultant and a visiting fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Mr. Shriver has also served as an active duty naval intelligence officer. He has won numerous military and civilian awards from the U.S. government, and who was recently presented with the Order of the Propitious Clouds by the President of Taiwan for promoting Taiwan-U.S. relations. And so we are very proud to have the support of Mr. Shriver, and thank him for coming to speak, make an official remark at our opening ceremony. Let's warmly welcome Mr. Shriver.
Thank you very much. It's really my great honor to be here, and I appreciate the invitation to participate in this conference with you. And Ms. Kadir, it's a great pleasure to see you today, and I'm always inspired when I have the opportunity to meet with you and see you and get reinvigorated with the cause and the important work that you're doing. So thank you for this work. There's a saying that you're partly judged by the company you keep, and I know that today my reputation is enhanced just by virtue of keeping such fine company. You are here for a very important reason, a very important event, and I wish you all well, and thank you again for including me. Next week, we'll have a very important meeting between officials of the People's Republic of China and our officials here in the Obama administration. If form holds, this will be one of the largest delegations ever to visit the United States. We'll have two senior state counselors, one who will be a counterpart to our Secretary of the Treasury, Tim Geithner, one who will be a counterpart to our Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. They'll talk about many issues, and they call this a strategic dialogue, actually a strategic and economic dialogue. But I'm afraid one issue that they won't talk as much about as I think all of us would like them to speak about is the issue of human rights, and in particular, the issue that our dear friends, the Uyghurs, face in Xinjiang today. Now, why don't they speak about these things at a strategic dialogue? Well, they're not unique. This is often the case of administrations of both parties to subjugate human rights issues to a dedicated human rights dialogue, which we support, of course. But there's a tendency to see these as issues that don't rise to the level of importance of, say, North Korea or Iran or South China Sea even. But I'm here to tell you that these are strategic issues. We cannot have a cooperative, productive, normal relationship with China while these abuses continue and the repression continues. What are we to make of a country that has 2 living Nobel Peace Prize winners, one of whom is in exile and one of whom is in prison? What are we to make of a country that doesn't allow people to worship on Easter Sunday as they're on their way to church? What are we to make of a country that takes a national hero like Ai Weiwei, somebody with impeccable revolutionary credentials, by the way, and detains and imprisons him? You know, psychiatrists, sociologists, they talk about a phenomenon of desensitization that can occur if you see too much violence on television, if you see too much of a bad thing. You can almost become numb and desensitized to it. I feel like sometimes our officials are becoming desensitized to these outrages. We should not accept that. I hope this conference is productive, and I hope you produce an agenda that's an activist agenda. But let me give you a few of my ideas. I hope Secretary Clinton will take the time and meet with Ms. Kadir. And I hope President Obama will do the same. I was quite honored when I served in the Bush administration when President Bush met twice with Ms. Kadir. I hope this administration will do the same, not just as a symbolic gesture, but to hear firsthand from the most passionate and advocate person representing the people of Xinjiang. I hope that our Congress will continue to put forward these resolutions, but with all due respect, I hope our members get even more ambitious. It's great that there are sense of the Congress resolutions to talk about how we want the repression and the violence to stop, but I think we need a more activist legislation. We have a Tibet Policy Act. We have a Taiwan Relations Act. How about a Uyghur Policy Act? If administrations aren't going to take matters into their hands in an appropriate way, let's have Congress do what Congress should do, which is to provide the oversight and force the administration's hands in these matters. I also hope that we will raise this at the strategic dialogue because it is a strategic issue. And I hope that we will continue to raise it in our most important forums because, as I said, I don't think we can have a normal and constructive relationship with China until these issues are elevated to that level of importance. So I urge this administration, friends of the administration, those in the opposition, to keep hammering away that this is an issue that we want addressed at the highest levels of our government when we interact with Chinese counterparts. Again, thank you very much for the invitation. It's my great honor, and I wish you all the best with your conference.
Thank you very much, Secretary Shriver, for your excellent remark and a strong, passionate speech, and especially the wonderful recommendations. Uyghurs would be extremely pleased if one day the U.S. Congress passes a legislation just like you mentioned in support of Tibet and Taiwan in support of the Uyghurs. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce one of the champions of human rights in the United States and around the world, Dr. Sophie Richardson. And Dr. Richardson is the Advocacy Director of Human Rights Watch's Asia Division and oversees the organization's work on China. A graduate of the University of Virginia and the Hopkins Nanjing Program and Oberlin College, Dr. Richardson is the author of numerous articles on domestic Chinese political reform, democratization, human rights in China, Cambodia, Hong Kong, and Philippines. She's just an expert on not only on China but East Asia as well. She has testified numerous times before the European Parliament, U.S. House, and Senate. She has provided commentaries all the time. I see her face on lots of media, BBC, CNN, ABC, New York Times, Washington Post, you name it. She's everywhere. when there is human rights, there is Dr. Richardson. So, and she's also author, she's a prolific writer. She writes not just articles, but books as well. She has written passionately on human rights. And she has this great book called China, Cambodia, and the 5 Principles of Peaceful Coexistence. So we are honored to have Dr. Richardson here with us, and let's welcome Dr. Richardson.
Thank you very much. It is a real pleasure and an honor to be here this morning. I want to start by conveying many of my colleagues' greetings to everyone here, but particularly to Rabia Kadir, who we've had the pleasure of hosting several times and who we have worked with for a long time. I always find it a little bit intimidating to speak, particularly in front of an audience that knows far more about these issues than I do, but particularly in front of Mrs. Kadir, who has paid and continues to pay an extraordinary and cruel price for her defense of her people. It's an honor to be here with you. My organization has written for decades now about abuses in Xinjiang, many of which are familiar to you, ranging from restrictions on religious freedom to the death penalty to the status of political prisoners. The Chinese government continues to conflate expressions of Uyghur identity, be they cultural, religious, or linguistic, with the 3 evils of separatism, splitism, and terrorism. This is, in our view, an expression of the Chinese government's hostility towards its obligations under international law. Of even greater concern, over the past 2 years, we've written extensively about the phenomenon of enforced disappearances. This is, in the human rights world, one of the most serious kinds of abuses that can take place, because it is, by definition, the state disappearing individuals wholly outside of due process. There are no warrants, there is no information given to family members, there is no information whatsoever about what has happened to people. They simply disappear. We have documented this in the wake of the July 2009 protests. We have documented this with respect to the Uyghurs who were refooled from Cambodia to China last year. We have documented this in the case of other refoulements. People who've been disappeared run serious risk of torture or other kinds of ill treatment, or worse, some are simply never found again. And this is, again, in our view, indicative of the Chinese government's intransigence, not just to its commitments under international law, but to its own laws. And this, I think there is no greater statement about a government's unwillingness to play by the rules, be they international or its own, than to disappear people, men, boys, children, adults, women, with no information given to their family members. I want to echo some of the recommendations that have been made this morning. It's not just important to hear people from the US government or other governments recognize the kinds of abuses that Uyghurs live through day in and day out, year after year after year. It is unacceptable for any government to give comfort to the Chinese by meeting with the very architects of these abuses and not meeting with the peaceful leaders of a movement such as this, like Mrs. Kadir. We see no reason why the president couldn't find some time in his schedule between now and next Monday to see Mrs. Kadir before he makes time to see people like Zhou Yongkang and Xi Jinping. In addition, Secretary Clinton said about 18 months ago that, quote, every day is Human Rights Day at the State Department. Well, if every day is Human Rights Day at the State Department, I see no reason why every dialogue with the Chinese government shouldn't be a human rights dialogue. And in that respect, I see no reason why every US government agency that's going to be represented in this discussion next week should not go to the table equipped with the case of at least one political prisoner, at least one human rights issue, whether it's environmental, whether it's about labor, whether it's about religion. Every single agency should be raising with its Chinese counterparts a human rights abuse, because unfortunately there's still plenty of them to go around. We wish you the very best for a successful discussion this week. We appreciate your leadership and your inspiration, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson, for your strong support of the Uyghur human rights issues. And as we know, Human Rights Watch is one of the most prominent human rights organizations around the world. And soon after the July 5th massacre, in fact, Human Rights Watch became the first organization to produce an excellent report on Chinese government's enforced disappearance of Uyghurs. And that report played a very important role in informing the international media, government officials, and public who actually were suspicious that probably the Chinese version of the story was correct. But after that, and after many such reports, the international community realized actually the Chinese security forces killed unarmed, peaceful Uyghur protesters. So thank you. And next, I would like to introduce the champion of human rights from another co-equally important human rights organization, Amnesty International. And I would like to introduce Mr. T. Kumar. Mr. Kumar has long been a great friend of the Uyghurs, who also personally worked on the case of Ms. Kadir. And Mr. Kumar is now the director and international advocacy for Amnesty International USA. He has worked in several Asian and African countries and served as a human rights monitor in many Asian countries, as well as in Bosnia, Afghanistan, Guatemala, and South Africa. These countries that had many human rights issues in the past. He has also served as director of several refugee camps, so he understands human rights and the suffering of oppressed people. He worked very hard to secure Ms. Rabi'a Kadir's release when Ms. Kadir was imprisoned by the Chinese government. Let's welcome Mr. T. Kumar.
Thank you, Aliy. Amnesty International is extremely pleased to be here to speak about a group of people who have been abused, brutalized by one of the powerful countries in the world, namely China. And very few people have paid attention to it. Very little international pressure to make protection of human rights of Uyghurs. And unfortunately, United States also joins that club of not being strong in pushing for the rights of Uyghur people. As Aliy mentioned, Amnesty International and even US Congress and US government came to know about Uyghurs because of Rabi'a Kadir's imprisonment. It is after her imprisonment that her children took the leadership in securing her release. Her family have gone through enormous suffering. When she was in prison, the family was devastated. Siddiq is here. Her husband basically raised the children as a single dad, 4 daughters and a son. Now that Rabi'a is out, her 2 children are still in custody as hostages by the Chinese authorities to silence her. So we are seeing a government that is of enormous brutality being used against a group of people in their own country. And because they are so powerful, powerful countries are not standing up to them. That's why this conference is extremely important. That's why this gathering is extremely important, to ensure that US government as well as other governments around the world take this issue as an issue of concern, where political prisoners have been executed. China is the only region in, Xinjiang is the only region in China where political prisoners have been executed. But silence from other countries is shocking. Special torture takes place in Xinjiang. Religious persecution because they belong to Islamic faith is mind-boggling that they can get away by doing this. So your conference is fundamentally important to plan out strategies to ensure that in coming months, at least the issue is being brought out to the international community. As a first step, we would urge President Obama to meet with Rabia Kadir and others. President Obama is the only president of recent times who did not meet with Rabia Kadir and other Chinese prisoners from China. We don't know why his advisors are advising against that. President Clinton met, President Bush met with political prisoners, but not President Obama. So it's time for President Obama to at least send a message that he cares about human rights of Uyghurs and other human rights activists in China. We urged repeatedly before the last meeting with the Chinese president here to meet with the presidents of the prisoners of China. But he failed. We hope before the security and economic dialogue that's going to take place in 2 or 3 weeks' time, he will meet. And also Congress, stand up. You have spoken up, but it's not enough because of the forgotten people of Uyghurs. So we hope this is the time to move forward and we all work together. Before I close, I also want to recognize Hans Hogrever, who on his own right is a champion of human rights and also Uyghurs. We couldn't have done our work without Hans. Thank you, Hans. And thanks for everyone for taking your time to come here. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kumar, and we are very grateful for your long-standing support of the Uyghur people and deep concern of the Uyghur issues, and with people like you that Uyghurs have a better days ahead. And we thank you for raising the case of Ms. Kadir and at the moment her children's case. And before I formally introduce our next speaker, Mr. Hans Hogrefe, and our great friend T. Kumar has already introduced him in part. And we are also very pleased to have Mr. Hans Hogrefe here. He is the greatest friend of the Uyghurs who has been on the Hill for many, many years, who served under former Congressman Tom Lantos, who was also a champion of human rights, and he served under Congressman James McGovern, who spoke earlier today. And Hans was a executive director of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. While he was serving as a director, he held a number of hearings specifically regarding the Uyghur issues, and he is our key contact at the U.S. Congress. That we went to him for all the advices we needed on the Hill, to open all the doors on the Hill, to knock on many members of Congress in addition to his own office. So we also cannot thank him enough for his support on the Hill, not just on the Hill, all the time. And right now, recently, he became the Chief Policy Officer and the Executive Director in Washington, D.C. for the Physicians for Human Rights. So let's warmly welcome Mr. Hans Hagrefe. Thank you, Hans. Thank you so much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, after being billed and praised so highly, I don't even know how I could possibly live up to these expectations, particularly as I follow a whole string of speakers that have really laid out for us so clearly the journey of the Uyghur people, both where, with regard to the United States Congress, the US government, the journey of the Uyghur people into the minds and the hearts of the American people, which my former boss, Mr. McGovern, had already pointed out to. That is still a journey that needs to continue. Unfortunately, all too often, Americans associate Uyghurs or have heard about Uyghurs only in the Guantanamo context. And in the Guantanamo context, they very often haven't heard the full story. They haven't heard the story of how the US government detained Uyghurs, even though they were cleared fairly early on, and just simply could not return them to China because they would be tortured. And as great credit to the previous administration, they did not give in to the temptation and the pressure of the Chinese government to return them to China. And I want to say that as somebody who's worked for the Democrats, of course, you can all guess what my thoughts were on Guantanamo in general, but this is something that I think the previous administration deserved does deserve credit, because the pressure was just enormous of the Chinese government to return those Uyghurs. There's no doubt about that. So that journey we still have to work on, that Americans know more about Uyghurs, know more about the culture, and know more about this region that has such a vibrant, interesting culture that is so unique and so different, despite of what the Chinese government says. And to help the Uyghur people to be as a household name, as my former boss said, as the Tibetans are, right? Many of you have done that. Many of you are the driving engine to get this story out, to make sure that people understand what is really at stake. And Carl Gershman was just so eloquent in pointing out what the consequences are if we just sit back and not allow and just watch this whole catastrophe unfold, and then say, well, you know, too bad. What could we have done? The time to act is now. Several speakers have already referred to the Uyghur Policy Act. Now, I worked on this conceptually. I was one of the people in Congress that have tried to make this a reality. This also is an uphill struggle, and we need your help and your support with that. Because there's really, as Secretary Shriver pointed out, there's really no reason. Why do we have a Taiwan Relations Act? Why do we have a Tibet Democracy Act, right? Why do we have a Burmese Freedom and Democracy Act? Why do we have the Jade Act? Why do we have all these acts, but nothing on Uyghurs? Now, let me say, it is, of course, very important, and very often these are precursors in the US government, to have these really strongly worded resolutions, because again, the U.S. government is really a microcosm of the American society at large, right? Many members do not know enough about Uyghurs. Many members only know Uyghurs from the Guantanamo context. So these resolutions are really great opportunity for Congress to not only make a sense of Congress or the voice of the U.S. Congress heard internationally, but also within those halls that which you're here today. So the Uyghur Policy Act is obviously something that we need to be very much aware of and very much working on. Let me also say, I make reference to a point which I hope highlights the importance of today's conference. In the early 80s, a relatively unknown member at that time from San Francisco by the name of Tom Lantos decided to invite a spiritual leader of a group of people, of an ethnic group, that he first met in Nepal. And those were the Tibetans, the Tibetan refugees. And he decided, why should I not invite His Holiness the Dalai Lama to the US Congress? Well, sometimes it takes the naivete of a freshman to start really, really big things. Because no sooner has word come out that this is what he's going to do, for the very first time an official invitation to US Congress, that virtually all hell broke loose. From the president down to the foreign minister, for the Secretary of State, everybody was telling him, you individually will end our our bilateral relations with China, and you do that single-handedly by extending this invitation, and the world is going to come to an end, and you should not do this. And everybody and their brother called my former boss, Tom Lantos, who I served for 15 years, and said, do not do this. There will be unforeseen consequences. Well, the consequences actually did happen. And this is what is relevant for this today. At a gathering in a room that is much less ornate as this one, in a fairly shabby, very functional room, the Dalai Lama met with a handful of members of Congress. And what he did in this meeting was basically completely ignored for the most part, had it not been for an intern at the Washington Post. An intern who served at the style section and who was Buddhist, and who said to the chief editor, would you mind if I came to go to this event? And I guess, the chief editor thought, well, it's part of the internship here in Washington, it is to go to Hill. Good luck to you. Go and do it. This intern took the only picture that still survives today of this historic meeting, which was then published in the style section, because that's where she, I guess, worked. This was in World Events, or on a federal page. But this is how it started, right? It started in a very small room. And His Holiness at that point laid out his From Peace plan, for which he later was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. That was the first time that he explained that. And this is what I think the relevance of the question that you have given yourself and the task that you have given yourself for today's conference, what the connection is. Today again, you're here, and you have a chance to do something truly historic. So I wish you the best of luck in your journey. I urge you to keep the model that the Tibetans have chosen. The peaceful insistence of cultural and economic and religious rights, your right to access to health, your right to access to education, your right to access to jobs, to keep that as the platform of your discussions. Because there's nothing that the Chinese would love more than for you to leave this peaceful insistence on these rights. Because the peaceful insistence of these rights have given you friends, support all over the world. And nowhere is that better come together or embodied than in Rabia Kadir. She is your voice. She has led this movement from, only in a few years, she was able to achieve hearings in the US Congress. So what Rabia, and in the European Parliament, in other parliaments around the world, and has given this movement so much attention that it is practically beyond belief what Rabia was able to achieve. Of course, with your help and your support, because you helped her, and you are the multipliers, basically. You are the Uyghur voices. So raise these voices as you've done in the past. In my view, you are exactly on the right path, and it is important that you now start thinking to maybe formalize that, to have a plan, a plan that you can announce, a document that would so clearly lay out your way, your future way. In that, I wish you the best of luck and all the blessings. And I will always stand now, also in my new capacity, of course, ready to work with all of you. And I know you have many friends on the Hill. I will be able to help and assist with whatever you need. And it has been a great honor to work with you and while I was serving on the Hill. But it is the greatest honor for me to call Rabia a friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hans. And in addition to his efforts to introduce Uyghur Policy Act, actually Hans also spearheaded many congressional resolutions that were passed expressing the deep concern of U.S. Congress of the human rights situation of the Uyghur people. So we also can't thank him enough for all of his efforts in promoting the rights of the Uyghurs. And among the invited distinguished speakers today, in addition to members of Congress, former government officials, and the human rights communities, we also have American scholars who are specialized in the Uyghur issue, not only on China but on the Uyghur issues. So today we are very pleased to have Dr. Drew Gladney. Dr. Gladney has known the Uyghur people for at least last 20-30 years, and he is a friend of the Uyghur community in the U.S. We all know him very well, and he has specialized on the Uyghur issue, and he even speaks a pretty good Uyghur, actually. You'd be surprised. And Dr. Gladney, at the moment, is a professor of anthropology at Sonoma College in Claremont, California. Previously, he was the president of the Pacific Basin Institute at Pomona. And prior to that, was professor of Asian studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, as well as senior research fellow at the East-West Center. Dr. Gladney was invited to serve as the inaugural dean of the Asia-Pacific Center for Security Studies in Honolulu, Hawaii, from 1998 until 2000. In addition to a PhD in social anthropology from the University of Washington, Seattle in 1987, Dr. Gladney has three MA degrees in religion and philosophy. He's a very knowledgeable man and a great scholar, and has been to Turkey, China, been to East Turkistan many times, and he's just a great friend of the Uyghur people. And he's also an extremely prolific writer. He has written extensively on China, on the Uyghur issues, human rights, anthropology, cultural issues, etc. And he has also written a number of important books in understanding the Uyghur issue, especially. And for example, some of the great books he wrote is Dislocating China, Muslims, Minorities, and Other Subaltern Subjects, published by the University of Chicago Press in 2004, and also Muslim Chinese, Ethnic Nationalism in the People's Republic of China, published in 1996 by Harvard University Press. And also Ethnic Identity in China, The Making of a Muslim Minority Nationality in 1998. And also he's the editor of Making Majorities, Constituting the Nation in Japan, China, Korea, Malaysia, Fiji, Turkey, and the U.S. And it's going to take at least a week for you to read the articles and some of the books written by our great friend and the Professor Gladney. And you wouldn't be bored, and you would be even more interested in reading his articles. So I would like to invite Dr. Gladney. Let's welcome him. Yeah.
I think I'd like to hire Alim as my personal PR consultant. And I wanted to, I was asked to not give a long lecture today I will spare you that, but just to get until tomorrow, you'll get a long lecture from a professor. But just a few brief remarks of congratulations. I think after our remarks by Hans, we should suggest that one of these photographs does go to the style section of the Washington Post because of the beautiful blue ties and the blue flag to match the Doğu Turkistan. It's one of the wonderful things about Uyghur culture is a tremendous style and tremendous beauty that Uyghurs revere. And it's something that has always struck me over 30 years ago when I first visited Doğu Turkistan. I also want to congratulate you particularly on this gathering, particularly at this moment. The world is focused on the problems of the Middle East and the region of Eurasia. And at this very moment in history, with the ending of bin Laden's life, there was a beginning, I think, an opening for Muslims around the world to redefine themselves. And I think the Uyghurs have a great opportunity here, particularly with the spring that has blossomed throughout the Middle East, not just the Jasmine Revolution, but the many openings. I have to say, and I have to confess, that many years ago, when I was asked about the Uyghurs by Chinese officials and academics and colleagues, and also about the Uyghurs' ability to organize and to come together and to pose a threat to China. I was asked this also in the United States by U.S. policymakers, and even in Europe by some government think tanks. I said, well, you know, the Uyghurs are a wonderful people. But one of the issues for the Uyghurs is when you have 3 Uyghurs together, you generally have 4 organizations and 5 presidents. This has changed. And I have now been somewhat jokingly telling my many, many friends around the world that now the Uyghurs have changed. They are organized, they are focused, they speak with one voice. And I want to congratulate you that you have found that voice in Madame Rabia Kadir. What a tremendous representative, the mother of the Uyghur people. And I often say to my friends that while the Tibetans have the Dalai Lama, the Uyghurs have the Dalai Mama. And I want to, and so I want to make this a moment of congratulatory joy. The Uyghurs are speaking now with a voice. I believe, personally, it'll be a voice that'll be heard around the world, not just in Washington, not just in Beijing, but also around the globe among peoples who are struggling for a voice. You are a model for many, many peoples that you have known through UNPO and other organizations who can learn from your dignity, from your restraint, from your careful planning, and all of that says a great deal about the Uyghur people. Their dedication, this long suffering, the tremendous suffering that you've been through. Some of us who have studied the region have some inkling, some idea of what you've gone through, but not nearly the experience that you've been through. So we admire you, we admire your courage, and I wish to congratulate you for this tremendous accomplishment today of coming together, and I wish you all the best, and I'll speak to you again tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gladney, for a very interesting and powerful remark. And as I explained to you earlier, that Dr. Gladney understands the hearts and souls of the Uyghur people. So it's no surprise that he's one of the few American scholars who specialized on the Uyghur issue. He's like the few just key authorities when the media, when the government want to know whatever is happening with the Uyghurs, he is the person that they find for any kind of recommendation or expert opinion. So we're very grateful for him to come all the way from California. And next, I would like to introduce a great supporter of the Uyghur people at the U.S. Congress, Congressman Frank Wolf. Congressman Wolf is serving in his 16th term in the Congress. He represents the 10th District of Virginia, which stretches from McLean to Winchester. Congressman Wolf sits on the powerful House Appropriations Committee, where he is a chairman on the Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee. He also serves on the Transportation and Housing and Urban Development and State and Foreign Operations Subcommittees. In addition, he is a co-chairman of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, a bipartisan organization made up of more than 200 members of Congress who work together to raise awareness about international human rights. And he has been a long-time champion of the Uyghur people's human rights at the U.S. Congress. It's our honor to have him. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a good and honor to be here with Reba and with all of you. This is a very important day for the United States with the death of Osama bin Laden, to show that the determination of the United States when it takes on any issues, hopefully the same pursuit will be with regard to human rights and religious freedom. But for I heard one newscaster say it's basically like the United States won the World Series, and it's a very, very important day. I am pleased to be here with Reba Kadir, who has, as all of you know, suffered tremendously for her beliefs. And as we gather here in the United States Capitol, two of her children still serve in a Chinese prison. I think this is a unique time in our country. You can see in China today the fear that the Chinese government has with regard to the freedom. They see what's taking place in Egypt. They see what's taking place in Tunisia. They watch what's taking place in Yemen. We have now seen them block on the internet at internet cafes in Beijing and Shanghai the words Jasmine. You can't Google Ambassador Huntsman's name. You can't Google Reba Kadir's name. You can't Google the Dalai Lama's name. And it's an indication of how fearful this Chinese government really is. I believe that I, age 72, will live to see the dramatic fall or change of the Chinese government, whereby there will be freedom and democracy in China. I would urge the Uyghur people to cooperate, and the Uyghur leadership to cooperate with the other dissident groups to form basically an alliance similar to what was done when we in the 80s were seeking the fall of the Soviet Union. Join hands with the Catholic Church, who's going through a very difficult time. The Catholic Bishop of Hong Kong was in to see me several weeks ago, and the church is going through a very difficult time. Join hands with the house church leaders, the Protestant pastors, and you may have seen on one of the most holy days for those of us who are Christian to have raided that house church in China, a house church that Congressman Chris Smith and I visited several years ago. Join hands with the house church leaders. Join hands with the Dalai Lama and those in Tibet who are seeking to sort of bring about freedom and opportunity, and the Uyghurs should be part of that. Sometimes when things look the darkest, they become the brightest. To give you an example, in early 80s, the Polish ambassador, Ambassador Spazowski, whose father was the founder of the Communist Party in Poland, defected from the Polish government and walked into the Reagan White House. And Spazowski believed deeply that there was something taking place, but he would then say, but communism was so strong that perhaps the West would not be able to prevail. I can remember talking to Ambassador Spazowski, who later moved to my congressional district out in Vienna, near where Reba lives. And he said that maybe the West didn't understand the forces of communism, how they were moving and how strong they very well be. But what he didn't understand, and many did not understand, is that quest, that desire for freedom. When Ronald Reagan gave the speech in Orlando, Florida, where he talked about, called the Soviet Union the evil empire, those who were in the Gulag in the Soviet Union were emboldened by that. When they heard Ronald Reagan talk about tearing down the Berlin Wall when he was with Gorbachev, the dissidents, as many of you and your families are, were emboldened and given hope. And keep in mind, in 1986, when it looked very dark, in 1989, we saw that Berlin Wall fall. There is a famous writer here in the United States named Whittaker Chambers, who wrote a very classic book that maybe some of the older people here may have read. It was called Witness. Whittaker Chambers was a communist who left the Communist Party to come to freedom. And Whittaker Chambers says in the book, when I left the Communist Party and communism, I believe that I was leaving the winning side and joining the losing side, meaning America, democracy. And then he goes on to say, nothing I have seen since has led me to believe that I was wrong. Whittaker Chambers was wrong because people like Tom Lantos and people like Ronald Reagan and people like Henry Hyde advocated and spoke out boldly, no pastel covers, but boldly for human rights, for religious freedom, and for dignity. And it's important that the Uyghurs joining with those in the Catholic Church, those in the house church, the Protestant church, those who are Buddhists, those who are just people in China who fundamentally want freedom. And the Chinese people are good people. It's the government that is a bad government, but the Chinese people themselves. And when the dissidents come over, they come in through my office, and I am given a lot of hope because I believe in my lifetime we will see this government fall. We will see the opportunity for freedom with regard to the Uyghurs and all of the other groups. In order to move that forward, because we have to act on what we want to see take place, I urge you to join with all of the other groups to come together in solidarity. Secondly, I believe you should put pressure on this administration, the American embassy, and I congratulate Ambassador Huntsman because I thought he did a good job. The American embassy in Beijing ought to be an island of freedom. It ought to be a place that whether you're a Uyghur, whether you're somebody who follows the Dalai Lama, or a house church leader, to see that United States embassy whereby it could be a place to advocate and an island of freedom with regard to advocating for. Thirdly, you should be meeting with Ambassador, now Secretary Locke, who's the Secretary of Commerce, who will become soon our ambassador in Beijing, to educate him. He should be asked to go to the Uyghur community and stand in solidarity with them. I asked him, would he attend a house church, and he wouldn't give me an answer, but now as he thinks about it, hopefully he will. He should go to Tibet and stand with the Buddhists in a temple in Lhasa. He should go and meet with the Uyghur people and stand and identify. He should ask to see Reba Kadir's children and visit them in prison. He should advocate with the Catholic bishops. He should be with the house church leaders. But I urge you to meet with them and go to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee before they confirm them and ask them to be on record that when he goes to Beijing, he will be an advocate for all those groups, and part of those groups will be the Uyghurs. And when we do that, I believe that in my lifetime, And as you look around here in the lifetime of just about everybody here, God willing, we will see freedom and democracy for the underground church, for the Dalai Lama, for the Uyghurs, for all people in China that want human rights and religious freedom. We will see there, and we will see that take place in Beijing, the same way we've seen it take place in Tunisia and in Cairo and other places around the world. Keep it up. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Congressman Frankel, for your powerful and passionate speech. We are already being overwhelmed and inspired. God willing, the authoritarian rule in China will end soon, and democracy will flourish for all. And next, I would like to invite our great friend, Miss Louisa Cohen. And she has been a friend of Uyghurs for, I would say, 2 decades. And she has been one of the strongest supporters of the Uyghur people's peaceful struggle for human rights and democracy for a very long time. And we cannot thank her enough for her efforts. And Ms. Louisa Grieva is Vice President for Asia, Middle East, and North Africa, and the multi-regional programs at the National Endowment for Democracy. She previously served at NED as a director for East Asia, senior program officer, and program officer. She has studied, worked, traveled in Asia since the 80s. She testified numerous times before the U.S. Congress on human rights situation in China and also democracy promotion in Asia as a whole. She was a member of American Enterprises, AEI's Armitage International Taiwan Policy Working Group in 2007, and the Council on Foreign Relations Term Member Roundtable on U.S. National Security to new threats in a changing world at the time. Ms. Grieva served as a member of the Board of Directors of Amnesty International USA from 1993 to 1998, and was a volunteer China and Mongolia specialist for Amnesty International from 1990 to 1999. Of course, she has a long track record of fighting for human rights for China and for all the press. She is currently serving on a 2nd term, and as a member of the Virginia State Advisory Committee of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Let's welcome our great friend.
Thank you very much, Alam. It's really a great pleasure to welcome all of the Uyghur community leaders and intellectuals from all over the world. I think well over a dozen countries are represented as you gather here for your conference this week. The National Endowment for Democracy is very pleased to be supporting the efforts of Uyghurs who are living in democratic countries to pursue democratic solutions to the sufferings of their brothers and sisters at home in East Turkistan. This support comes in the form of grants for 4 different activities. Since 2004, NED has supported the work of the Uyghur American Association, now headed by Alam Seytov. This project documents human rights abuses suffered by Uyghurs in China through the Uyghur Human Rights Project. The staff are here. Alam heads the staff, and then Amy Rieger and Henry Sajaski are all here. Also, since 2006, NED has provided support for the World Uyghur Congress, which for it to convene an annual training program and leadership seminar to look in depth at mechanisms for pursuing human rights and democratic rights through international advocacy. Also, since 2006, NED has provided support for another of the co-sponsors of this conference, the International Uyghur Human Rights and Democracy Foundation, headed by Ms. Kadir, particularly for their work in advocating for the rights of Uyghur women and children at home, and also to convene an annual training for women leaders. And it is a beautiful sight to see all these blue ties. I would like to see more women with a blue scarf someday, but Ms. Kadir's foundation is working on providing specialized training for women to become even more involved in the international human rights movement. Also, since 2007, NED has supported the Independent Uyghur Pen Club. This is the Uyghur affiliate of the International Writers Association Pen International, or the Pen Centers. In fact, one of China's 2 living Nobel Prize winners, Liu Xiaobo, served as president of the Independent Chinese Pen Club as one of his many activities in support of fundamental human rights, and particularly freedom of expression in China. And this Chinese language pen club has a counterpart. There, in fact, is a Tibetan Writers Club, which is an affiliate of PEN, and the Uyghur Pen Club. And so this is another example of Uyghurs getting organized, speaking within the mainstream of international human rights discourse, principles, and mechanisms for international cooperation in support of universal human rights. And so that's one of the, that's the importance of the Uyghurs forming their own pen club to allow writers, journalists, historians, and all those who create work in the Uyghur language, both in support of the cultural survival questions that several speakers have talked about, and also to join in international advocacy forums. So this week's conference gathers members, leaders, and participants in many of these NED-supported activities, as well as many others. And it's wonderful to see you all coming together. You deserve our admiration for devoting 5 whole days to a very in-depth discussion of some very important political dilemmas that are crucial to the survival of your people as a people in your homeland. And for those of us or you who haven't seen the program in depth, it's very interesting to see what will really be the subject of discussion. Of course, there'll be first an analysis of the current situation, the suffering, the oppression that the Uyghurs suffer at home at the hands of the authoritarian government in place in China. Second, in a very practical way, the effort to take stock of the capabilities and the needs of the current diaspora movement is quite important. And in fact, there's quite a lot of time devoted to sharing presentations on the current situation and future prospects of the Uyghur pro-democracy organizations and movements all over and every continent, not only North America and Europe, but also in Turkey, also in the Middle East, in Central Asia and Russia, and in Australia. Thematic sessions will cover the question of refugees, a large flow of refugees, particularly since July 5th. What can be done to help them with the challenges of seeking political asylum, to resist the great pressure that the Chinese government brings to bear on first asylum countries to return these people to China, where they would surely suffer a great threat to their freedom and even their lives. Other thematic topics very urgently needing to be addressed include the use of social networking to broaden and strengthen the movement, analyzing the role of Islam in the Uyghur movement, and the role of youth in the exile democracy movement. As we've seen all over the Middle East, something not to be forgotten. And third, and most importantly, in addressing many of the questions your supporters have raised this morning, you will be addressing the big picture question of political direction. What is the strategy for realizing Uyghurs' rights, democratic rights? So understanding several different topics, understanding the Uyghurs' history of self-government in the past, their experiences with independent states, and other forms of self-government. That's the first area. A second option is drawing comparisons, contrasting, and understanding points of comparison with His Holiness the Dalai Lama's middle way approach to realizing Tibetan rights. And thirdly, exploring the meaning of self-determination in international law and international human rights principles as it applies to the East Turkestan question. And these big picture questions, I believe, are being addressed with great seriousness, not as a matter of bombast and slogans and demands, but rather in a very analytical and scholarly way with prepared papers, with time for good discussion back and forth over a period of several days. And it's just fascinating when you think about the political history and the political future of East Turkestan to think about, as English speakers, for your hosts and well-wishers here, just listing some of the historical names for your homeland leads to some thoughts, so I'll list them. Think about over about a 1,000-year history, let's say, start kind of in the middle of things. The history of the Uyghur Khanate, Chagatai Khanate, Karakutan Khanate, Mogulistan, Kashgaria. Of course, it used to be called Chinese Turkestan at some periods, Eastern Turkestan, Uyghuristan, Uyghuria, Altar Shahir, Yeti Shahir. Remember all that. And then, of course, in the Qing, then we hear about Xinjiang, 1884. There's, of course, the history of the first East Turkestan Republic and the second East Turkestan Republic. Xinjiang province, which did exist before the creation in 1955 of the Uyghur, Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. So this incomplete list of names, I think, shows a fascinating history that we have to keep in mind. One, there is a history of conflict and turmoil. We can't have a fantasy of a peaceful past when everyone realized their rights, and only now, because of the communist government of China or the imperialist reach of the Beijing-based government, now Uyghurs face challenges. Uyghurs and all the people who lived in this area of East Turkestan, whether it's Uzbeks, Kazakhs, Turkmen, Mongolians, and many other people, in fact, have faced terrible turmoil in the past, and so thinking about how they overcame that should give us hope for the future. The homeland of the Uyghur people also has been a crossroads of civilization, so we should again take some hope from the fact that Uyghurs have interacted with people, their neighbors, both near and far away peoples. There's been a lot of communication, exchange, and cross-cultural learning. And in fact, your homeland, the Uyghur homeland, has long been a multi-ethnic mosaic. So both to guard against a kind of purist dream or utopia that somehow there can be a Uyghur homeland only for Uyghurs. That's never been the case, and we should always keep in mind when Uyghurs think about their future, they have to think about a multi-ethnic future. And of course, in this long view, we also are reminded that foreign rulers of the lands of Central Asia are nothing new. Of course, in the age of empire, this in fact is the norm. Imperial rulers rule many peoples. We're now in the modern age of nation states. We think about self-determination. The power comes from the people. Who are the people? So clearly these questions of self-government require us to adhere to certain universal standards and definitions of the dignity of citizenship and requirements for the legitimacy of political rulers. And quite simply, this is the modern project of democracy. So in fact, this is what your conference this week is tackling. I look forward to hearing the results of your discussions. I hope and expect that the conference will advance your understanding of your options and as well confirm your commitment to finding a peaceful way for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Grieve, for your suggestions. And we are deeply appreciative of NED's both moral and financial support, without which, of course, we wouldn't be here today championing the cause of the Uyghurs. And we are very grateful for that. And in addition to the support of U.S. Congress, in a way, concern of the U.S. government and NGOs, we also work with different organizations that, and also groups of people that are under the threat of Chinese government. That includes, of course, Tibetans and other groups, and including Taiwanese, actually. Although Taiwan is an de facto independent state, but still under the military threat of the People's Republic of China, which considers Taiwan a part of PRC. And we are very lucky to have today our great friend, Dr. Gerrit van der Wees, who is a senior political advisor at FAPA, which is Formosan Association for Public Affairs. And they have been in the United States for many decades, championing the rights of the Taiwanese people, because Taiwan, the people in Taiwan also suffered tremendously at the Chinese KMT rule, now under threat of the Chinese CCP. So it's very important for the Uyghurs also to understand their suffering. And recently, the people of Taiwan became very interested in the cause of the Uyghurs, especially after China pressured Taiwan to cancel Miss Kadir's film, The 10 Conditions of Love, 2 years ago, and also tried to deny a visa to Miss Kadir. As a result, the people of Taiwan became extremely interested in the suffering of the Uyghurs and became also very supportive. So, we are very grateful that Dr. van der Wees is here with us. So let's welcome him.
Thank you very much, Aliy, for this warm introduction. It's really a pleasure and an honor for me to be here with you on this very important day. On behalf of the Taiwanese American community, I want to congratulate you with this important event, this important conference. I do not look Asian, but my wife is Taiwanese, so I have been a Taiwanese son-in-law for 35 years. I work with the Taiwanese American grassroots organization called Formosan Association for Public Affairs. So over the past year, we've really become close friends with our Uyghur friends. There have been a number of occasions where we worked together. In November, Mrs. Kadir spoke a great speech at our event, Thanksgiving event that we had for the Taiwanese American community here in Washington, D.C. And in January, when President Hu Jintao came here, we worked closely together with you in the demonstration in front of the White House to protest against the human rights violations in China, in Tibet, in East Turkistan, and the threats against the neighbors in Taiwan. So we presently, and Aliy referred to that already, the government in Taiwan has not allowed Mrs. Kadir to come to Taiwan last year for the screening of her movie, 10 Conditions of Love. And a lot of people in Taiwan were very interested in that. So that is really quite a shame. But next year, in January, there will be elections in Taiwan. And when the DPP government comes back to power in Taiwan, then Mrs. Kadir will be a guest of honor in Taiwan next year. So you see, we have started this cooperation and coordination. And if you all can keep a secret, then I can disclose you what we refer this to. This is the 3T movement: East Turkestan, Tibet, and Taiwan. So let me close by referring to Martin Luther King here of the United States, who was such an inspiration for many people here. So he said, "We shall overcome, and together we shall overcome." Thank you very much.
For today's conference, we have invited a number of members of Congress, and some of them confirmed their attendance, and some of them stated that they'd be here. But of course, they are very busy, and I believe Congress is out of session at the moment, so some of them are traveling, not here. So as a result, some of them may or may not be able to come. So, unda bo'lsa, hozir bizning mehmonlar asosan so'zlab bo'ldi, kelib, ba'zi bir kongress a'zolari kelib so'zlamoqchi, hamda ularning vaqti o'xshamaganligi uchun balkim birdan keyin qilish mumkin. Hozir Robiya xonim yana qayta saklik taklif qilma, bir yakun xarakterlikka bir ikki qiz so'z qilmoqchi. Robiya xonim.
Bugün aldı bilen şu yığınımızga kelip Uygurlarning avazini, Uygurlarning kişilik hukukunu qo'llab, mishada sizlarga şu Amerikaning vakilleri süftida javob berib, ham bizning erkinligimiz, ozodlik uchun alayda vaqtini chiqarib kelgan barliq mehmonlarga chin ko'nglimdan rahmat aytaman. Shuni deyman. Endi sizlar anladinglar, ko'pchilik bayatdan beri so'zlab atgan so'zlarni. Bizning bu qitimki Sharqiy Turkiston Aliy Kengishimiz eng xalqaraning naytı bir ciddi bir paytida shundaq oshmisi bo'lmaydigan vaqtga to'g'ri kelib echilib atıdı. Sharqiy Turkiston Aliy Kengishining bu qitim echilishi, masalan, Yasiman o'tir sharqdagi inqiloblarning maydonga chiqayotgan vaqti va Xitoyning bizni shiddat bilan qattiq bostirayotgan vaqti va xalqaroning yuqorida Tayvanninki vakili apandim so'zlagandek, Sharqiy Turkiston, Tayvan, Tibet masalasiga intayin jiddiy ko'ngil bo'layotgan vaqtda biz dunyoning hamma yeridan kelib, butun dunyodagi hamma davlatlardagi lider rahbarlar, yetakchilar biz bu yerga yig'ilyapmiz. Mana shu bugun yığının mazmuni ve bugünkü yığınımızdan xulası bizning ümitsizlanmaydiganligimizni, xalqimizga bizning cho'qib shundaq umidimiz bilan tursak, o'zimiz uchun kurash qilsak, g'albining bizning oldimizda yaqinqi bir davrda bir yo'riqlikning ko'rinayotganligining signalini berdi. Ras, Sharqiy Turkistonda ko'p millat yashaydi. Köp millet yaşayan hemmisi bizden köçmen qarindaşlarımız bilen biz yüzyıllardan beri yaşap kelyapmiz. Mesela Kazak, Kırgız, Özbek, Tatar, Mongol bu bizden qarindaşlarımız. Yani başka köçmen qarindaşlarım var. Yani şular biz bilen birlikte yaşayatıdı. Biz şunun için yani onundan başka Hanzo qarindaşlarımız biz bilen köçüp gelip yaşayatıdı. Hanzo halkımız biz bilen birlikte ortaklaşıp yaşayatıdı. Şunun için biz özümüzün davayımızı hazırgıça tinchlik bilen nayt söhbetlerini ötküzüp hep barımız dep keldik. Bunun deyin kim mi? Yani imkanımızın beriçe tinchlik bilen, ovozimiz bilen, kağızımız bilen, kalemimiz bilen ve planlarımız bilen özümüzün halkımızı ve zeminimizni erkinlikka chiqirdiganligimizga ve öz taqdirimizni özümüz belgilaydiganligimizga men ishinaman. Biz umidni yo'qotmaymiz, xalqimiz umidni yo'qotgani yo'q. Biz kurashdan bir daqiqani to'xtab qolmaymiz. Biz masalan Yahudi xalqiga qarab biqinglar, masalan nurg'un xalqlarga qarab biqinglar, necha ming yillar sargandar bo'lib o'zining davlatidan ayrilib vayron bo'lib ketgan xalq eng oxirida o'zining tilini yo'qotmay, dinini yo'qotmay, kimligini yo'qotmay o'zining zaminiga qaytib keldi. Uyg'urlarmi hozir o'zining kimligi va o'zining erkinligi, o'zining dini, o'zining e'tiqodi, o'zining tarixidan voz kechmay da'vo etib turibdi, inqilob qilyapti, birlikda kurash qilyapti. Uyg'urlarni shundaq xalqlar qo'llayapti. Biz bir ovoz, bir yetakchi, bir signal, bir liniya üstüge keldik. Bu bizning xuddi juglarni apandim degandek, 3 odam tepsak 5 lider deganda voz kechib, hammamiz ittifoqlashib bir ovozga markazlashgan vaqtimiz. Bu shuning uchun butun dunyoning hamma yeridan o'zinglar ishib 20 milyon xalqning ovozi bo'lib keldinglar. Bu ovoz kapital xalqning ichida butun dunyoga anglanayotdi. Men bugun bu yig'indan aytib faxrlanan, sizlardan faxrlanan. Bu yig'inni kelgusida butun chet eldagi qo'llayotgan qarindoshlarimiz, do'stlarimiz, qo'llovchilarimiz bilan birga bizning xalqimizga yaqin kelgusida erkinlik va kishilik huquq demokratiyani akilishini umid qilaman. Ham sizlarning shuning ishonishinglarni umid qilaman. Rahmat.
Rabia xonimga ko'p rahmat. Ben hem de buni Englishcha o'qibay. First of all, of course, I'm extremely grateful for all our distinguished guests and speakers who have come here, made excellent, powerful remarks today, inspiring all of us. And the situation of East Turkestan, of course, is changing. And today's conference is really a historic conference in light of the Jasmine Revolution in the Middle East and Chinese government's heavy-handed crackdown. And as earlier stated, the 3 T's, East Turkestan, Tibet, Taiwan, and all of these people in all of these areas are struggling for our freedom and rights. And I'm also very pleased that Uyghur leaders from different countries and different communities have come here to attend this very special conference. This certainly gives us tremendous hope to our people, and with our peaceful struggle, victory will be at hand. And our country, East Turkestan, of course, is a multi-ethnic country. We have always lived with Uzbeks, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, and other indigenous population, including the new immigrant population, Chinese, and others. And but we will continue our peaceful struggle, and by means of dialogue, discussion, by using the power of our voice and our pen, and by strategic planning, then we hope that our land will be free, then we will be able to determine our own political future. And only when we have hope and when we never stop, just like the Jewish people who have always kept their faith, kept their religion, their traditions and the language, and after thousands of years of struggle, finally they were able to establish their own nation and live there. And of course, that's also our hope, that one day our country will become free. And in today's situation is, of course, as earlier Dr. Drugaletny stated, a very interesting fact that 3 people, 4 organizations, 5 different leaders. But today's, we're hoping to create one voice, one leader, and one path to pursue, ultimately representing some 20 million Uyghurs in the world, and to have a free, a democratic country of our own, which respect the human rights. So I'm very proud for all of you for coming today to today's very important historic conference, and I'm very proud today. So thank you all very much. Okay, take it in. Well, our today's the official opening ceremony of the East Turkestan basically special summit, or the future of the Uyghur issue in East Turkestan. The opening ceremony is officially over, and we'd like to again thank our speakers. Let's give a warm applause to our speakers and guests. And also thank all of our delegates from all around the world, including the United States, for coming to attend to this very important historic conference, to have almost a weekly long of discussion regarding the future of the Uyghur people. And we thank you for coming today. And this is officially the end of the opening ceremony. So thank you very much.
Mr. Schreiber, what message does this Uyghur conference send to the Chinese government?
Well, I hope the message that it sends is that the Uyghur people, including the diaspora, are united in a cause, that they want their freedoms, they want religious freedom, freedom of expression, and they want to regain their human dignity. And I hope it also sends the message that there are a lot of Americans and others in the international community who are standing with the Uyghurs in this cause.
And what does the conference send to the Uyghur people, you think?
Well, hopefully hope that that there are people coming together to create an agenda to try to get the attention of influential people in Washington, influential people around the world. So hopefully that's a silver lining and a small bit of hope for the people of Xinjiang and the Uyghur people.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Mubarak olsun Rabia Qadir xanım. Bugün Echilish Murasiminglar shunchalik g'albilik o'tdi. Endi o'zingiz aytgandek, sizning nutqingizda aytgandek, bugungi bu yig'in intayin zo'r ahamiyatga ega, mayli hozirgi dunyo vaziyati bo'lsin, mayli Uyg'urlarning hozir tortayotgan kuniga nisbatan bo'lsin, intayin strategik bir ahamiyatga ega deb o'tdingiz. Qanday bir strategik ahamiyatlarga ega yana bir takrorlab bergan bo'lsangiz.
Endi qarang balam, bugun mening hayojinim emas, 20 milyon vatandagi xalqim shuni ko'rgan bo'lsa qanday hayojonlanadi. Chunki ular qorong'ilikning ichida talada nim bo'layotdi. Qanday erkinlik kurashlar bo'layotdi. Ularga kimlar ega chiqyapti. Ularning ovozi bo'lib kimlar so'zlayotdi. Fuqidganlari nihoyat oz persen. Chunki Xitoy yolg'on tashviqot bilan ularni qo'rqitib, umidsizlantirib, umidsizlik ichida tugatib etmoqchi bizning xalqimizni. Shuning uchun men bizning xalqimizga har qanday orliqlardan bu uchurning bordiganligiga bilaman. Bo'libmi Radio Free Ajaning, bo'libmi bugungi Radio Free Ajani har qanday qilib mening xalqim dunyoning bulun pishqoqlarida anglab, bugungi o'zi uchun kurash qilish uchun butun dunyoning hamma yeridan balalarini, xizmatini, iqtisodini tashlab, mushu Washingtonga, mushu bir tarixiy fursatda Uyg'ur xalqining vatani Sherqiy Turkistan, yani Uyg'uriya, Uyg'uriston. Bu davlatni qanday ozod qilish, qanday shu maqsadga yetish, shu xalqni qanday erkinlikka chiqarish, shu xalqning turmudi, shu o'zining ozodligi uchun, o'zining kelgusi uchun, o'zining erkinligi uchun kurash qilib, mushundaq 1 minutlarga erishamay. Qizim, mushu 1 minutlar uchun o'lim jazosiga hukm qilinayotganlar va mushundaq o'z xalqi uchun vaqirayman deb qamoq jazosini muddatsiz muddatga ketayotganlar va 70 mingga yaqin Uyg'ur farzandlari turmida yetyapti hozir. Turmular to'shib ketdi, g'oyib bo'lib ketdi, urib o'ltirilyapti, qiynab o'ltirilyapti, tirik ko'mbityapti. Mushundaq bir sharoit ostida mushu kun uchun, mushu xalqining erkinligini to'lash uchun, mushu bayroqni lapiltib tutish uchun qurbon berganlar uchun mana shularning vakili bo'lib, dunyoning hamma yeriga chiqqan liderlar, barliq oldidagi oldin hisobdagilar, vatanparvar zotlar, ziyolilar, diniy zotlarimiz, diniy ziyolilarimiz, ayollar vakillarimiz, yoshlar vakillarimiz bu sorunga Washingtonga, Amerikaningki siyosiy markazi bo'lgan Oq Gumbaz, Oq Saroyning tagida, Kapitol Hillning ichida bugun Amerika Kongressining, Amerika senatorlarining va siyosiy tadqiqotchilarning va milliy masalaga ko'ngil bildirganlarning va kishilik huquq tashkilotlarining rahbarlarining Uyg'ur xalqiga bergan javobi bilan buni birlikda o'tkazdi. Men buning uchun nihoyatda 20 milyon xalqning ovozi bo'lish sifatim bilan, 20 milyon xalqning qini bilan, yeshi bilan, vujudi bilan, orzusi bilan jug'urilgan bir tip bo'lish sifatim bilan oshlar bilan tan xo'shal bo'lyapman va kelgusiga umidlarim shundoq cheksiz. Chunki biz yolg'iz emas. Birinchi yaratgan Allah, ikkinchi mana shundoq dunyoda qo'llayotgan tashkilotlar, siyosiy o'llar. Uchinchi bizning xalqimizning oldingi hisobdagi musha dunyoga kechib chiqqan barliq imkoniyati va inqilobchilarimiz, rahbarlarimiz, liderlarimiz Uyg'ur xalqining kelgusi uchun, Sharqiy Turkistonning kelgusi uchun uning yo'l xaritasini sizish uchun bu yerga to'plandi. Men bulardan mana mush Echilish Murasimida Kapitol Hillning ichida ko'rdimki, ajoyib fikrlar, yolg'iz mening xalqimlar emas, chet elliklarmi, ajoyib fikrlar, ajoyib takliflar, ajoyib strategiyalarning tuzilishi, planlarning tuzilishi va shundaq mukammal planlarning tuzilishi bilan biz quruq shuorvozlik emas, mustaqil qilimiz degan necha 10 yillardan kelayotgan shuorvozlik emas, haqiqiy amaliy mustaqil qilishning planlarini o'tirg'i qo'yib, shuning yo'lida menib, shuning oqida menib, hammamiz o'xshamagan fikrdagilar bir fikrga kelib, kimning to'g'ri o'zi shu ovozni berib, demokratiya, erkinlik bilan ovozga qo'yib, xalqimizni haqiqiy aqldor odamlarning fikr birligi bilan ozodlikka chiqamiz deb o'ylayman. Qizim mushu Radio Free Asia, ya'ni Erkin Asiya ovozining biz uchun necha yillardan beri, 10 yillardan beri bütün 20 milyon xalqning ovozi bo'lib kelyapti. Mushu ovozni qurib bergan Amerika hukumatiga va butun g'arb dunyosiga rahmat. Ham shuning bilan birga bugun mush sorunimizga kelib, Kongressdan senatordan kelib, Uyghur xalqining ozodligi uchun o'zlarining shundaq umidvorligini xalqimizga umid bergan barliq kelgan ishtirokchilarimizga rahmat. Butun dunyodan yig'ilib kelgan barliq xalqimizga rahmat. Butun dunyodagi xalqimizga vatanning ichidagi xalqimizga mishaga kelgan 150 dan ortiq ishtirokchilarimiz nomidan cheksiz salom yo'llayman. Ham umidvor bo'lishini umid qilaman. Hergiz ümidsizlenmişiz. Biz yaqin kelgusida özümüzдің erkinligimizga chiqamiz. Chunki o'tir sharqni ko'rdingiz. Qanday qo'zg'aldi? Diktatorga har qanday bir xalqning chilashning cheki bor. Xalq qo'zg'algan vaqtida o ajoyib qo'zg'aladi ekan. Biz shu qo'zg'alg'ichilarning bir tal ushqun o'ti bo'lamiz.
Rahmat sizga Rabiya Qadir xonim. Bugungi ko'k kiyimlaringiz, bugungi kungi shunchalik yarashibdi. Ya'ni ko'k bayroqdan kiyim kiyibsiz. Ya'ni umid beg'ishlaydi xalqimizga deb o'ylayman.
Albatta, mening xalqim menli ko'k bayroqdan kiyim kiymadim. Bu mening bayrog'im. Bayrog'imning rangi. Xalq meni bayroq deb chiqargan ekan, men bugun ularning planini, ularning yo'l xaritasini sizish Echilish murasimida albatta bayroqning rangida kelishim kerak. Undan sirt Turkiyadagi qarindoshlarimiz gördünüz, Sherqiy Turkistanning bayrog'ining rangida shundoq yaxshi galastiklarni ishlab evatibdi. İznaklarni butun dunyodagi qarindoshlarimiz ash salomni hammamiz bayroqni bo'ynimizga taqab, Allohga iltijo qilib, xalqimizga umid evatimiz. Cho'qim biz shu ozodlikning oshqishini xalqimizga ko'tarib boramiz. Rahmat.
Yig'inlaringlarning muvaffaqiyatli bo'lishini umid qilamiz. Bir hafta davomlashida shunday bo'lgan. Demakchi, Uyg'urlarning Washington haftaligi desak bo'ldi ekan.
Albatta shunday desak bo'ldi. Washingtondagi ham tungushqi qitim eng nihoyat muhim bo'lgan bir strategiya yig'ini deb qaralsa bo'ladi.
Barliq faoliyatlaringizga tilaymiz.
Rahmat.
Miss One, how important is this conference in the current situation, and can it bring any change to the Uyghur movement and the people?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the World Uyghur Conference for having Freedom House at this very important milestone in your community's identity building. I think this conference is incredibly important, and it happens at a very critical juncture. China is getting more and more powerful economically by the day, and at the same time, really not conforming to its human rights obligations and its human rights responsibilities to its citizens. And that is deeply troubling to those of us who believe in freedom and democracy. This conference will be useful not only for the Uyghur diaspora to build networks, to strengthen the movement, to learn from each other, but it's a really useful reminder for us here in the United States that we still need to shine a light on China's human rights abuse towards all religious minorities, but especially to the Uyghur community. They have suffered much, they are easily forgotten, and this conference, I think, will be very, very critical in raising the awareness of us in the United States, of congressional members, of the US State Department, of the US government at all levels, that they need to push back on China, and we must demand human rights from China. This is not a time to back away from our principled position. We are a democracy. The United States was founded on very fundamental freedoms, and we believe that this should be extended to everyone in China, including the Uyghur community and including other religious minorities. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hörmətli televizor köygüçülər, bu Washington'un, yani Amerika paytaxtı Washington'daki Amerika parlament binasida chaqirılgan Sherqiy Turkistan Uyghur Kéngishining Echilish murasimi mishada oyoqlashdi. Vakillar hozir tamoq chiqyapti. Tushdan keyin bular yana, ya'ni 2 dan 4 gacha Xitoy konsulxonasi oldida va Oqsaroyda Xitoy hukumatiga qarshi o'zining norozilik namoyish faoliyatlarini o'tkazmoqchi. Biz namoyish maydonlaridan yana davomli sizlarga xabar berishni davomlashtiramiz. Rahmat sizlarga. Hörmətli televizor köygüçülər, 2011-ci 5-ci ayının 2-ci günü düşənbə Amerika paytaxtı Washingtonga joylashgan Amerika parlamentinin yig'in zalida o'tkazilgan Sherqiy Turkistan Uyghur Aliy Kengishining Echilish murasimi mishada oxirlashdi. Vakillar bugungi Echilish murosimini g'albilik oyoqlashtirgandan keyin navbatda tushdan keyin soat 2 dan 4:30 gacha Amerika poytaxti Washingtondagi Oqsaroy oldida shundaqla Xitoy konsulxonasi oldida Xitoy hukumatiga qarshi norozilik namoyishlari elib bordi. Biz davomli sizlarga namoyish maydonlaridan ma'lumot yetkazamiz. Erkin Asiya radiosi uchun Washingtondan Gulchehra.